Hi everyone, this is Lauren. I have saved your seat at my craft table, and today we are going to make and decorate translucent Polaroid slides to give our Polaroids a more vintage, aged look. We'll be using images in Polaroid ephemera from the Summer House Digital Collection by Shabby Art Boutique, as well as some personal photos. The materials needed for this project include tissue paper, and this is just from the Dollar Tree, printer paper, parchment paper, also from the Dollar Tree, a pair of scissors, double-sided tape, a tea light, and something sharp. Lastly, we'll need an iron. If you do not have tissue paper, you can also use napkins. You'll simply pull them apart to use one single layer of the napkin. You can also use tea bags, whether they're used or new. We are going to first begin by prepping our paper to print the images from the collection onto the tissue paper. I'm first covering each edge of the printer paper with double-sided tape, and then we're going to place a piece of tissue paper onto our printer paper. We'll then cut away the excess tissue paper that may be showing on the edges to ensure smooth printing. I am using a laser printer for this project, which uses toner instead of liquid ink. I have not tried this process on an inkjet yet, so I'm not sure if the results will be the same. After we have printed our images onto tissue paper, it's time to cut them out in order to separate the tissue paper from the copy paper. You can throw away the copy paper or save it for another project. It was only needed in order to feed the tissue through the printer smoothly. Now that our images have been printed, I'm going to trace the Polaroid strip around my first photo so that I know exactly where to cut. I repeat this process then using the Polaroid photos next for the images that have white backgrounds. We are now ready to transform our photos from this plain tissue paper, which is more opaque, to a translucent photo image. This is what the difference will look like. The photo on the left is plain tissue paper, and the photo on the right is our finished result. The photos will be translucent in appearance and have a shiny, waxy finish to them. They will be more clear to see through rather than the original format, which is grainy and spotty to look through, especially when you hold them up to the light. I'd also like to say that when I first did this, I really couldn't tell much of a difference until I had an original tissue piece to compare it to. Once they were side by side, the results were obvious how transformative the process was on tissue paper. To do this, we're going to want to protect our workspace with a towel or a pillowcase. I then put the cover of a scrapbook pad over the towel, followed by a piece of parchment paper. The purpose of the parchment paper is to prevent your art from sticking to regular paper. Because once the wax is melted, it will act as a glue, and you will need to be able to remove your photos from the mat. I'm using a tea light, but any candle will work, and you'll want to use a tool with a sharper end to it in order to scrape the pieces of the wax onto your image. You do not need a lot. You just need to make sure to spread the wax fragments around the photo evenly to ensure that all spots are covered. You'll be able to tell if you miss spots because they will not be translucent after ironing. Place a second sheet of parchment paper over your wax and your photo, and then you're ready to iron. You don't need to do this for long, and you don't need a lot of heat. You can see at the top and the bottom where I missed wax, and it appears more opaque than the rest of the image. This will be covered by our Polaroid anyway, so I don't need to add to it. But if this were in the middle, you would be able to easily put it back down, add more wax, and then iron again. I would recommend waiting just a minute for everything to cool as the parchment paper is still hot to the touch. Once it's cooled a bit, lift up your image to see if there are any places you need to add more wax. I found it easiest to use a newer candle. When the wax got low in this tea light, larger chunks began to fall out instead in crumbles rather than shavings, and that made the process uneven with my ironing. After I waxed and ironed both the images for the Polaroid and the Polaroid strip, it was time to attach them to the ephemera. I started with the Polaroid strip images first, and I taped them to the back of the strip, and then I used the paper elements to decorate. When you're ready to decorate the Polaroids, take your first waxed image and tape the 4 sides of the photo to the back of your Polaroid. Now you are ready to decorate the front with elements from the kit as well as any bits and bobs. My whole goal for trying this technique was to age my photos to give them a more muted, vintage, or deteriorated look. Also, specifically for the photo strips, I wanted them to look like real negatives that you used to get in your package when you picked up your printed photos. You could achieve this same translucent effect by printing right onto acetate, but this is way cheaper than purchasing printable acetate sheets. I saw a woman do this using napkins at a craft show years ago, and she did this to her little teddy bear photos. Instead of printing on tissue paper, however, she printed on regular paper and then melted the wax. The outcome feels and looks more opaque than this. It reminded me of vellum. I'd like to try that next. I'm going to go ahead and set this to music now for just a few minutes while I collage these with you, and then I'll be back to test out black and white pictures next. See you in a minute. I really like how the colored photos came out, especially since the color palette of this kit has bright pinks and pops of yellow. But the story I am developing in my mind for my journal also includes a small vintage touch. So I wanted to test out black and white photos with this effect too. I followed the same steps and I will hold them up to show you. When you compare them side by side with the colored images, black and white prints are easier to see. While both are still translucent, the effect is quite different. I like both options, and I think both side by side will work very well with my story. Thank you for crafting along with me at my table today. I will be working on my journal next, which will include these Polaroids that we made together today. I will see you all soon. Until then, take care.